This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
So, in honor of the new edition, a very interesting shiur tonight on Parshas Toldos, and the shiur tonight we're going to call the 10 Commandments of Raising Children. The 10 Commandments of Raising Children. Okay, now this is really a takeoff. Can't take credit for the originality of the title. Rav Miller Zechatzak Levracha had his famous Shiurim, the 10 Commandments of marriage, the 10 Commandments, the 10 steps to greatness. But this is a new venue, the 10 Commandments of Raising Children. Okay, we begin immediately in Parshas Toldos, and Yitzchak Avinu tells Esav to go fetch him some meat. Esav is gonna catch him some meat, and Yitzchak is going to give him the bracha. And it's very interesting that we know Rivka tells Yaakov, you got to get the bracha, you have to take this bracha. So Yaakov masquerades like Esav, and he brings his father the meat, and Yitzchak is very surprised. Yitzchak says to Yaakov, Mazeh miharta limtzoi b'ni, how do you do it so quickly? Vayomer, Yaakov Avinu says, Ki hikra Hashem alekecha lefanai. It wasn't a coincidence. Hashem led me this way. I had special siyata d'shmaya, had special heavenly assistance that led me to bring you the catch very quickly. And the pasuk says Yitzchak is very startled by this response. Yitzchak says, come here, let me feel you. Are you indeed Esav? And Rashi says, why is Yitzchak so incredulous? Why is Yitzchak thinking maybe this is not Esav? Says Rashi in number 2, because Esav generally does not invoke the name of Hashem. And here the man standing in front of Yitzchak says, Ki hikra Hashem alekecha lefanai. So Yitzchak is thrown off. Who is this guy that's invoking the name of Hashem? So again, immediately we see there's a distinction between the way Yaakov talks and the way Esav talks. Yaakov says the name of Hashem. Esav does not say the name of Hashem. And then, Vayigash Yaakov el Yitzchak aviv vayimusheu. Yaakov approaches Yitzchak. Yitzchak feels Yaakov, and he says the famous words, Vayomer hakoil koil Yaakov v'hayadayim yedei Esav. The voice is the voice of Yaakov, and the hands are the hands of Esav. What did Yitzchak mean? The voice is the voice of Yaakov. So Rashi says on the spot, what did Yaakov say? In Pasuk Yotes, number 4, Yaakov tells his father, Kum na shiva. Please sit up. Please sit up. So Yitzchak says, please? Esav doesn't say please. Esav doesn't have manners. So immediately we see there are two major differences between the way Yaakov speaks and the way Esav speaks. Yaakov says the name of Hashem. Yaakov says please. Esav does not invoke the name of Hashem. Esav does not say please. However, this is something we know from our childhood. Yaakov says please. Yaakov says the name of Hashem. But what we may not be so familiar with is there's another form of speech that Yaakov has, as opposed to Esav, that it would seem that Esav has more derech eretz than Yaakov. How is that? And this is an incredible diuk, an incredible inference. Yaakov tells his father, Kum na shiva. You sit up. First person, second person, third person. Which one? Kum na shiva. You sit up. Second person. He's speaking to him like you speak to your friend. Yaakov says to his father, will you please sit up? Kum na shiva. You know what Esav says? Look at number 5. Vayaskam hu matamim. Esav makes dishes. Vayave la'aviv. Vayomer la'aviv. Yakum avi. Let the father get up. Third person. Like when you talk to your Rebbe. When you talk to your Rebbe, you don't say you. Will you stop that already, Rabbi? You don't say that. You say, will the rabbi stop that already, right? You speak to your Rebbe in third person. Will the Rebbe, will the rabbi. So it's very interesting. Yaakov Avinu addresses his father like you address your friend. Kum na shiva. You sit up. And Esav seems to have a lot more respect than Yaakov. Esav says, Yakum avi, let the father get up. What's going on here? I thought Yaakov is the one who says please. I thought that Yaakov is the one who invokes the name of Hashem. And now when it comes to this form of speech, Yaakov is speaking second person, Esav is speaking third person. This is the amazing diuk of Rav Nosson Adler. About 2.5 weeks ago, someone handed me the Chidushim of Rav Nosson Adler. He said, you want it? I said, sure. And already in the last couple of weeks I used it. This is the third time I'm using the Sefer of Rav Nosson Adler. Rav Nosson Adler was the Rebbe of the Chassam Sofer. Says Rav Nosson Adler, the Torah is pointing out the difference between the way children speak to their parents. Jewish children, Goyish children. Jewish parents say you. Second person. Goyish parents say the father. Why should that be? Why should that be? Why would Jewish children have less respect for their parents than Goyish children? Says the Chassam Sofer an amazing thing. Says the Chassam Sofer, all Jews are connected. But as much as we're all connected, and as much as we're all one neshama, there's a concept of bra mezaka abba. A child gives merit to the father. Whatever the child does, raises the father up. Bra kara da'avua. The child is the legs of the father. The father could be home, the child is doing a mitzvah, the father is going up in Olam Haba. The child is bra kara da'avua. There is such a closeness, there's such a dveikos, the father and son are intertwined, they're intermingled, they're one entity. So it would be inappropriate for a child to say to the father, will the father, as if there's a disconnect. There is no disconnect. They are hooked, hook, line, and sink. They're connected. Like when we daven to Hashem, we don't say, will the Hashem please give me? No. Baruch Atah. We say, you. Say to God, you. You. How can we say to God, you? Because v'atem hadveikim Hashem lekechem. We cling to Hashem. Yisrael v'ayraisa v'kudsha b'richu chad. We're one with Hashem. So if we're one with Hashem, you can't say, well, the Hashem. You! Can you imagine the chutzpah we have? We say to Hashem, you! Just because we're connected. The same way we're connected to Hashem, we're connected to our Father. So the Klal Yisrael says, Kumna, you Father, get up. A guy says, Yakum Avi, will the Father get up? Very interesting. This is not something that we necessarily would have thought. If I would have asked you, as you came in tonight, how do Jews talk, how do Goyim talk, which is more respectful? I think 99% of people would say, it's more appropriate, it's more respectful to say, will the Father get up? No. Rav Nosson Adler, Chassam Sofer says, when you talk to your father, you're one. Bara mezaka abba. Now we're going to develop this. If I were to ask you, what is the primary role of the father? Okay? And this is something that may be counterintuitive. You may not have ever heard this before. If I were to ask you, what's the primary role of a father? So, I have to be mechanich my son. I have to train him to learn, to daven, in good manners, not to let his cell phone ring in the middle of a shiur, right? I have to train him to have proper kavod, right? So, what's the main job of a father? Maybe he's a guide, he's the director, he's the Moira Derech. Every time the kid says, don't do that, don't do that. What's the main job of a father? Protect. Says the Torah, right? Let's see what the Torah says. It's a pasuk in Parshas Re'eh. It's talking about the mesis, someone who seduces another person to serve Avodah Zarah. It says, Ki yisizcha achicha ben imecha. If, let's say, your brother, the son of your mother, seduces you, oy bincha, or your son, oy bitcha, or your daughter, oy eshes chekecha, or your wife, oy reyacha asher kinafshecha, or your friend that's like your soul. Who's that talking about? Who's your friend that's like your soul? Your best man? Right? This is the Torah speaking. The Torah is identifying. There's someone in your life who's reyacha asher kenafshecha. Your friend that's like your nefesh. Says Rashi, ze avicha. Your father. Who's your father? Reyacha asher kenafshecha. That's a big chiddush. You hear what Rashi's saying? Who's your father? If you're a father, your job is you're your child's sole friend. Interesting. Tell you another amazing thing. Yosef HaTzadik tells the brothers, don't worry, you sent me down here. You didn't send me down here to Mitzrayim. Listen to this. V'ata enel lo yatem shalachtem oisihena. You didn't send me here. Ki ha'elokim. God sent me here. You ready for this? It's going to blow your mind. Vayisimeni le'av le'paroi. Says Yosef, he made me a father to Paroi. Hashem made me Paro's father. Yosef is Paro's father? How is Yosef Paro's father? Yosef is Jewish. Paro was older, right? Paro had that, triangular Egyptian beard with the little mustache. Yosef is Paro's father? Come on. Says Rashi. You know what the definition of a father is? Two things. L'chaver. It's your friend. Here Rashi. Okay, this is Rashi. The great Rashi was Baruch. What's the definition of an Av? Chaver. Okay, take that in. If you came here just to hear that, what's an Av? Chaver. A friend. What else? Patron. Supporter. Right? Like my father. He doesn't have to come to the shiur. You think, most of the things that I'm saying, he probably told me already, right? I heard from him. But he's come, he shows me support, right? He's supporting my efforts. So what's a father? A chaver, he's your friend, and he's your supporter. Says Reb Shimon Schwab, look at this. Says Rashi, says Reb Shimon Schwab, number 12. Uve Rashi, la'av, lechaver, u'lepatron, koloimar, shahaperu shel av, al pi ha'torah, the definition of father in the Torah, hu chaver u'patron, liyos livnoi hachaver hachitoy. Okay, so if you want to know, if you're giving yourself a test, am I a good father? Ask yourself the following question. Am I my son's best friend? That's question number 1. Number 2, va'oid mutal al ha'av liyos hashomer, the guardian, v'hapatron hachineman, and the supporter. Doesn't say anything. You have to make sure that he learns well. Doesn't say make sure he has good manners. Doesn't say make sure he says thank you. Those are all nice things. The Gemara says a father has 5 responsibilities. He has to teach Torah. He has to teach a trade. He has to give him a milah. He has to give pidyon haben. But those are not the definition. Those are just specifics. What's the definition of father? Friend, supporter. Who says this? Rashi. Okay, that's a good source. That's what Rashi says.
Isn't chaver implying a supporter?
Chaver is a friend. Now, it doesn't necessarily. Not every friend you have do you support. Besides being a friend, you also. Okay. Now, where else do we see this? Look at number 13. Vayomer Yaakov le'echav liktu avanu. This is the end of next week's Parsha. Yaakov Avinu says, when Lavan chased after him, he says to his brothers, gather stones. Yaakov says to his brothers, Yaakov doesn't have any brothers. He has one brother, Esav, and Yaakov's not talking to him. Yaakov's not going anywhere near him. What does it mean Yaakov says to his brothers? Says Rashi, who are Yaakov's brothers? Haim Banav, his children. You hear this? What does the Torah call a brother? Your children, your sons. Another Rashi. Now you ready? So you say, I don't know, come on, nowadays are you telling me that the definition of a father is to treat your child like your brother? Does anybody say, it's a Rashi, but do we follow Rashi halacha lamaisa? Is this practical? Listen to the words of the Chida. You ready for this? Rashi, the Chida, on the pasuk in Vayetze, Vayomer Yaakov le'echav liktu avonim, Perish Rashi, le'echav heim banav shahayu lo achim nigam shar. Says the Chida. You ready? This is the Chida in the Sefer Bris Olam. Lavmadnu. We learned from here. Sheyakov Avinu olav hashalom hayamachshiv es banav ke'achiv. Yaakov treated his sons like his brothers. Says the Chida. This is not just a story. The Torah is telling you what you should do. B'chein roi la'av sheyachshiv banav gedolim. Now this is very important. It doesn't mean your little kids you treat like your brothers. You treat a little kid like a brother, they have no direction in life. You need to train them. You need to tell them what to do. But when your son is an adult, or your son is mature, your job is not to be, don't do that, don't do this, do it this way, do it that way. You value them like a brother. Ki'ilu eim hachib. Says the Chida, uvazeh yiu sheketim misha'ananim. If you want to have a good relationship with your adult children, you treat them like your brothers. Says the Chida, you know what the remez is? Hine, matov, umanoim, sheves, achim, gam, yachad. Achim, gam, is begematria, banav. The numerical value of achim, gam, is banav. And this is a very big chiddush. You may not be realizing what a tremendous chiddush is. In other words, what we're saying, what's the definition of the father? The definition of a father is chaver. If you're giving your kid a milah and a pidyon haben, and you're teaching him Torah, but you're not your kid's friend, you're doing the specifics, but you're not fulfilling the role. You're not fulfilling the role. If you're fulfilling the details, but you're not the patron, you're not his advocate, you're not fulfilling the role. The definition of an av, says Rashi, Vayisimeni la'av leparoi lechaver ulepatroin. Very powerful thought. There's a story over here from Rav Shach. There was a kid who was suffering from very overbearing parents. And the Rosh Yeshiva brought the parents to Rav Shach, and the parents said, what do you mean? A parent has dual roles. On the one hand, the parent has to teach the kid. And as a Rebbe, we know, now listen to this. There's a difference between a parent and a Rebbe. A Rebbe, when you teach a child, when you teach children in yeshiva, the Gemara says, Zeroik mara b'talmidim. The kid has to be scared to death of the Rebbe. The kid's lips should be dripping with sweat. The kid should be shaking in awe of the Rebbe. That's what the Gemara says. Whether that is applicable nowadays, that's another story. But ideally, the Gemara says, any student that doesn't sit before the Rebbe shaking, the Gemara has very harsh criticism. You can't learn that way. You have to be quaking, shaking in front of the Rebbe. And a parent has to be the kid's teacher. But the parent also has the role of kirachim of albanim. He has to shower love on the child. So the parent has to balance these two roles. Love, fear. Says Rav Shach, that was in the olden days. That was before there was something called yeshiva. But there was somebody by the name of Rabbi Shua ben Gamla who made a takana that in every city there has to be yeshiva. So you send your kid to yeshiva, you're not teaching him Aleph Beis, you're not teaching him Chumash, you're not teaching him Mishnah, you're not teaching him Gemara. You're not his Rebbe, the yeshiva is the Rebbe. Nowadays, says Rav Shach, a parent only has one job: shower the kid with love. Okay? Now again, I don't claim to be an expert in the field of child rearing, and not everything I'm saying is Torah misinai. You know, most importantly, you need a big dose of common sense. I'm telling you a very important thought. Rashi says the definition of an av is a chaver and a patron, a friend and an advocate. That's the definition of a parent. Okay? Something worthy of consideration. Okay, so that's commandment number 1. Be your kid's best friend. Ready? Now we're up to number 2. You know, you hear the kid speaking Lashon Hara. So you're sitting there at the Shabbos table, and you hear the kid speaking Lashon Hara. Don't do that. The kid says, why not? So you hold up the Chafetz Chaim book. It says over here that Lashon Hara is a bad thing to do. So the kid's looking at you. The father doesn't even know what Lashon Hara is. He's reading from some book because, he heard a story that you have to learn Chafetz Chaim at the table. The words of the father are not coming from his heart. They're just, something he's repeating over. How can a person be effective? And this is not only for parents. How do you get your words listened to? Right? Everybody, when they speak, they want their words to make an impression. They want to be an effective communicator. So, where in the Torah does it talk about teaching children? We say it every day, twice a day. V'shinantam levanecha. V'shinantam levanecha. It doesn't say learn with your children. V'limadatem levanecha. It says v'shinantam. Teach them sharply, like an arrow. What's an arrow? You shoot an arrow. The arrow goes into the person. It goes into their heart. How can you ensure that what you say to your children will enter their heart? Very simple. Says the Al Shech HaKadosh. Look at number 18. V'shinantam levanecha. You should teach diligently to your children. What does it say in the previous pasuk? V'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavacha hayom al levavecha. The words of the Torah need to be on your heart. Which means like this. Says the Alshich. How do you know if your words will enter the heart of the listener? It all depends where it comes from. If it comes from your mouth, it will go into their ear, through one ear and out the other. If you say something to a kid and you don't mean it, don't bother. Don't bother. It's worthless. Don't bother. Because you're repeating something that you heard some rabbi say you're going to tell your kid. It's worthless. It says the Torah. Al levavecha, if it's on your heart, then v'shinantam levanecha, it will go in like a dagger. It's not on your heart. It's not going to do anything. Says the Al Shech HaKadosh, very important line. He says like this. He says, in the middle of the piece, He says, Hine bazeh hadavar taloi. What is it dependent on? If your words are effective, Haloihu ki kol davar v'davar kafi maitzai Hashem mimenu yetzei. Wherever it comes from, Kenya hilucha imnuchasa Hashem yenuach. That's where it will rest. If it comes from the mouth, it will rest on the earlobe. If it comes from the heart, it will go into the heart. So, but next time you tell your kid something and he doesn't listen, it's not his fault. Depends where it's coming from. If it comes from the lathe, if you mean it, if it means something to you, it will mean something to him. If it doesn't mean anything to you, chances are it won't mean too much to them either. That's number 2. Second commandment of raising children. You want to be effective, you better mean it. Number 3. Before the Chet HaEgel, who did the Avodah in the Beis HaMikdash? The Bechorim. Why did they lose the Avodah? Why did they lose the privilege? So we're all familiar, because they sinned with the golden calf. Says the Chizkuni, that's not the real reason. You know what the real reason is? You know what there was a fundamental crack in the original system. What was the fundamental crack? Here you have a Bechar. So the guy is a firstborn. He's trying to learn the Avodah. He asks his father, how do I do the Avodah? Father says, I don't know. I'm middle child. I have no idea. So the kid has to go to some school, listen to some instructor. The kid's never going to pick it up. Why? Because someone told him how to do it? You don't learn from somebody telling you how to do it. You learn from watching your father. So Hashem switched the system. You know what the system is? Levi, to the son who's a Levi, to the grandson who's a Levi, to the great-grand. Because there's a fundamental crack in the Bechar system. Because just because you're a Bechar, your father may not be, your grandfather may not be, and now you're just relying on instruction. Instruction doesn't work. So somebody could tell you something. If you don't see it, it goes right over your head. Commandment number 3, there's an amazing Chizkuni, just it's kedai to know this. Chizkuni says, the reason why Hashem had to abdicate the original system is because it doesn't work that way. You can't have Bechar to middle child to Bechar to middle child. You need living example. That's how teaching works. That's how chinuch works. You have to see it with your own eyes. So commandment number 3 is, you want to be an effective in bringing up your kids, don't look at them. Look at yourself. How you act, that's how they'll be. You don't even have to say anything. Now, we could have made another commandment out of this, but we're going to keep it, it wouldn't look good if there were 11 commandments, right? That wouldn't fit. So we're going to add one small idea to this 3rd commandment. That is, there's a new sefer that came out called Moira Tzedek. Moira Tzedek is different drushos and addresses that were given by Rav Pam. And there's a chapter in the sefer about questions they asked Rav Pam, especially in the areas of chinuch, raising children. So they ask him, if you look at number 22, if you look it up in the Sefer Moira Tzedek, page Kuf Samach Beis, Be'eze oifen yesh l'tapel b'baya shel derech eretz hayom. Everybody knows. Kids today, they have no manners. They're mechutzafim, right? It used to be 40 years ago, everybody was so well-mannered. Everybody said, please, thank you. Everyone was so respectful. I don't know if that was necessarily true, but that's what they say. And nowadays, kids, they have no manners. How do you teach kids manners? Says Rav Pam. You ready? He says, Moira v'Rabbi Glatstein. You want to teach your kids derech eretz? Don't say anything to them. They will watch how you behave. Like we said, they learn by example. Now this is a very important nekuda. You ready for this? Kids will not learn by how you treat other people. You could be the nicest guy. You could be the most well-mannered guy in shul. You say, please, thank you. You're very courteous. Kids will learn from your example, says Rav Pam, by how you treat them, by how you speak to them. If when you ask them to do something, you say, get up right now and get me my slippers before I take them in, right? And if everybody else, you would say, oh, would you kindly, then how do you think the kid's going to talk? Not the way you speak to everyone else, the way you speak to them. The way you treat them, that is the way they will treat other people. Rav Pam says over that he remembers his mother on Friday night when his mother would ask, Friday, It was a very busy day. Especially wives are very tired. They're very busy. And the mother asked the kid, will you please take off the spoon from the table, clear off the spoon? Says Rav Pam, when his mother would ask the child to clear off the spoon, his mother would say, Sheifala, could you do me a very, very big favor? Could you please help me out and take the spoon off the table? And she would take the spoon off the table, and the mother would say, oh, you're such a tzaddikas. Thank you so much. You're such a wonderful help. How could I ever repay you? And she would shower the kid with such brachas. What did the kid do? He took the spoon off the table. Big deal. Says Rav Pam, when you grow up in a house like that, where the kid is spoken to, b'derech kavod, b'nachas, he would say that from his mother, he only heard what we call, he says, rein shabarain, the purest, cleanest expressions. Says Rav Pam, and this is what we're learning, that kids learn from your example, but not just how you treat other people, the way you treat them. The way you treat them, that is what they will learn. So that's commandment number 3. Commandment number 3 is, children learn from example, especially how you treat them. Okay. Number 4. You ready for this one? The Gemara asks, why was Eretz Yisrael destroyed in the times of the first Beis HaMikdash? It's Gemara's question. Says the Gemara, they asked the Nevi'im, none of the Nevi'im knew. They asked the Chachamim, none of the Chachamim knew. They asked the Malachim, the angels didn't know. Until God himself said, you know why Eretz Yisrael was destroyed? Because the Jews didn't make Birchas HaTorah. Big spiel. They didn't make Birchas HaTorah. I mean, it's an important thing. That's why Eretz Yisrael was destroyed, because they didn't make Birchas HaTorah. I mean, Birchas HaTorah is a very important thing. But that's why Eretz Yisrael was destroyed? Come on. Says the Lavush, the Gemara doesn't mean why Eretz Yisrael was destroyed. You know why Eretz Yisrael was destroyed? Avodah Zarah, Gilui Arayos, Shvichas Damim. The question of the Gemara is not why Eretz Yisrael was destroyed. Where are the Talmidei Chachamim? The Beis HaMikdash has been destroyed. But at least there should be many Torah scholars, many leaders, many tzaddikim. And we're looking around, and all we have are unlearned people. Where are the Tanoim? Where are the Anshe Knesset Gdola? Why are the fathers not producing children who are Talmidei Chachamim? That's a question we could also ask. Where are all the Talmidei Chachamim? What happened to them? Says the Lavush, the Gemara is answering, they didn't make Birchas HaTorah. What does that mean they didn't make Birchas HaTorah? So what the angels don't see, when they come to shul in the morning, they're not making Birchas HaTorah? It's not such a secret. I mean, let the Nevi'im come when the people come into shul. So the Nevi'im should watch. What are they davening? They're saying Asher Yatzar, they're saying Moed Ani, and they're skipping Birchas HaTorah. What, nobody knew that they were skipping Birchas HaTorah? Says the Lavush, an amazing thing. When you eat a piece of cake, you make a mizona. When you eat Carlos and Gabby's, you make Hamaitzi. Right? What bracha do you make when you learn? Learning is so enjoyable, it's so delectable, it's so geschmack. What bracha do you make when you learn? Lasoik b'divrei Torah. Says Lavush, the bracha you make in the morning on Birchas HaTorah is not a Birchas HaMitzvah, it's Birchas HaNehanin. It's a bracha of enjoyment. You drink water, you make a bracha. You drink soda, you make a bracha. You eat chicken, you make a bracha. You learn Torah, you make a bracha. You know why? Because you enjoy it. If you don't make Birchas HaTorah, and the kid sees, oh yeah, the father's learning, but he's doing it as a chore. So the kid says, my father's doing it as a chore, and I don't need it. I'm moichel the chore. I don't need it. What do I need it for? Says the Lavush, if you want Torah to be passed on to the next generation, you better make sure you enjoy it. If you enjoy it, the kid says, you know what? It's taka, it's geschmack, it's very enjoyable. Let me try some. But if you learn, you can learn 24 hours a day. But if for you it's a bother, a chore, why would a kid be interested? What do I need it for? What do I need it for? So what the Gemara means, Mibnei ma'av ha'aretz, where are the Torah sages? The answer is, if the parents don't enjoy it, the kids are not interested. The kids are not interested. And that's why, Rabbi said, where do we daven in Tefillah and Shachris that our children should be committed to Torah? V'harev na Hashem Elokeinu es divrei seirascha b'finu. We say, God, make the Torah sweet in our mouth. And only then, v'niya anachnu, v'tze'atzoinu, v'tze'atzoi amcha beis Yisrael. If the Torah is sweet in your mouth, if the kid sees, my father enjoys it, it's geschmack, he gets a chiyus from it, it gives him life, the kid said, let me try some. Doesn't matter how much you learn, how little you learn, it does matter. But in terms of the children, what matters is it important to you? Do you enjoy it? You enjoy it, they'll enjoy it also. You don't enjoy it, they say, let me try something else. Commandment number 4, passing down the Torah, raising children, enjoy your Torah, enjoy your mitzvahs. Commandment number 5. Now this is really out of the box, off the beaten track. Okay? Ready for this one? This I saw, 7-8 years ago. I didn't know what I was going to do with this, but now it finally made its way into the Shiur. One of the close Talmidim of the Alter of Sabatka, Rav Meir Chadash. Rav Meir Chadash had a very unconventional practice, unconventional in his approach to chinuch. And you have on your sheet, number 25, you have a beautiful picture of Rav Meir Chadash, in case you're wondering what he looked like. Show it on the camera to everybody, right? And this is his son, Rav Aaron David Chadash, 2 generations of Mashgiach. He said like this: never catch your child, never catch your student red-handed. Never catch them red-handed. What does that mean? You get a wind, your kid's about to do something wrong, you told them not to do it. The natural reaction, the instinctive reaction is, as soon as they're about to do it, you open the door and you catch them. Right? Because you want them to see that you're on top of them and you know exactly what they're doing. That's the worst thing you could do. Says Rav Meir Chadash, as long as you know, they don't have to know that you know. They don't have to know that you know. Every kid's going to do something wrong. Why? Why shouldn't they know that you know? Says Rav Meir Chadash, every kid has a sense of shame and embarrassment and the desire to do the right thing. Especially to regain his reputation and his standing with the parent. If they know that you know what they did, they have nothing to gain by stopping. Why? Because their rep is already sullied in your eyes. So what difference does it make if they do it again? But as long as they don't know that you know, next time they may not do it again. Next time they may not do it. Next time they say, you know what, I did it the first time, but if I change now, my parents will never know, and I could just correct myself. Rav Meir Chadash would say, every bacher, and it could be applied to every child, has to have room to retreat. The possibility of bouncing back in the area in which he failed and in a self-respecting way. He would write like this: the student you catch in improper behavior is the student you've lost. Very interesting idea. Okay, I'm not telling you this is a approach that should be applied across the board. Something very interesting to think about. Rav Meir Chadash would write, you must always give the student an opening to return through. You have to give them a fig leaf. You have to give them a way to come back in a respectful way. You know, but they don't have to know that you know everything. Interesting thought. Very interesting thought. This time around, the Yetzer Hara got a hold of him. But as long as he still thinks that you think he's good, maybe next time he'll prove to you that he is. But if he thinks that you think he's no good, the kid has nothing to gain. Okay? Something very interesting. Don't catch a kid red-handed. Okay. Number 6. Now we're going to have some skulos, right? You can't have a shiur without a good skula or two. Okay. Says the Gemara in Bava Basra. This is number 26. Okay. Commandment number 6. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi Amar. Kol haragel lasos tzedakah. Someone who accustoms himself to give tzedakah to aniyim. Or, likewise, to do chesed. Zoicha, he'll merit, having loibanim balei chachma. You'll have smart children, balei oisher, wealthy children, balei agada, children who darshan. One of the three. One of the three. Chafetz Chaim writes, Lamaisa, in the Sefer Avos Chesed, he says an amazing thing. Nowadays, people, he says, people looking to have children, and they look into all kinds of segulos, and all kinds of mystical heebie-jeebies, and who knows, Buddha, and all kinds of things that at best are avodah zarah midaraisa, and at worst they're stam nonsense. But people looking for banim, why don't you follow the Gemara? The Gemara says, someone who accustoms themselves to tzedakah v'chesed, the Gemara is saying, will merit to have banim, balei chachma. Balei chachma, very wise children. Balei osher, wealthy children. Balei agada. Balei agada refers to those who kadarshan. The Ben Yoyada explains that this is midah keneged midah. What's the midah keneged midah? Measure for measure. He says like this. You give the ani $1, you accustom yourself to giving the ani money, you're giving him life, you're giving him chiyus, you're giving him something to live for. You'll have children who are balei chachma. Why chachma? Chachma tichaya be'aleha. When a person has wisdom, he has a different life. It gives him life. It breathes the spirit into him. You give spirit to the ani, Hashem will give spirit to your children. You give money to the ani, God will give money to your children. You give the ani kavod, your child will be, says the Gemara, balei agada. What's balei agada? Balei agada is like this. Somebody who could say a good pilpul shir, he may be the gadol hadar, but people don't understand what he's talking about. So people don't respect so much. Someone who gives a good halacha shir, so people see the guy knows halacha. But how exciting could a halacha shir be? But a balei agada, those who darshan about the agadic portions of the Torah, is very interesting. People come to hear. That is something that garners kavod. Okay. So that is commandment number 6. A special segula from the Gemara to have successful children is to be ragel. The Chafetz Chaim says to be ragel means to accustom yourself to tmidas, consistently, constantly, tzedakah v'chesed. You ready? Number 7. This is another segula. People like segulas, right? Says the Gemara in Shabbos and Avchaf, Amar Rav Huna, haragil bener, havin leibanim talmidei chachamim. Someone who accustoms himself to lighting candles will have children who are talmidei chachamim. What kind of candles are we talking about? Says Rashi, 2 kinds of candles. Ner Shabbos, Ner Chanukah. Now, who doesn't light Ner Shabbos and Ner Chanukah? You have to know. You have to know when to light it. You want to light it 18 minutes before. This way, at least you get, the woman is getting Tois Shabbos, even according to Rabbi Glatstein Mitz, right? Because according to Rabbi Glatstein Mitz, Ben Hashmosho starts 3/4 of the mill before Shkia. So that's about 13.5 minutes before Shkia, plus another couple of minutes for Tais Shabbos. That's why a woman lights 18 minutes before. So what does it got to do with me? I'm not lighting the candles. So the Marsha says, doesn't say you should be careful to light them. It says haragel. You remind the person who's lighting them to light them properly. That's a special segula to have banim tamir chachamim. Ner Chanukah. Chanukah's coming. When's the correct time to light Ner Chanukah? Okay, so nowadays it's whenever everybody's around. But if you have the opportunity in your home, now this year it's going to come out very early. Come out, 4:30, 5 o'clock. If you're around then, so it's a special inyan, a special segula, that somebody who lights Ner Shabbos, Ner Chanukah at the correct time, havin le banim talmidei chacham. Okay? That is commandment number 7. Light your candles. Okay? Light your candles. It's a lot easier than not catching your kid red-handed. So if you say, I can only do one, and I'm going to do the easiest one, this might be the easiest one. Light your candles. I can't hold myself back. When my kid's about to do something wrong, I'm going to bust him. You can't accept that one? At least light your candles. Okay. Number 8. Ready for this? How is a person zocheh to have banim talmidei chacham? Amar Rava. Rava said, Derachim Rabbanon, Havile Benin Rabbanon. If you love Talmidei Chachamim, you'll have children who are Talmidei Chachamim. That's it. Simple as that. It's Gemara. Nothing more we need to add. The Gemara says, you love Talmidei Chachamim. Why do you love Talmidei Chachamim? You love Torah. So you love the Torah. So if, when the Sefer Torah comes out of the Aron, you stand up, you kiss it, yeah. But that Torah you love. You know why? Because that Torah you put back in the Aron and you go home and do whatever you want. That's not the real Torah. The real Torah are the Talmidei Chachamim. Because when you go home, they're schlepping you back, right? So Talmidei Chachamim, those who love Talmidei Chachamim, will have Banim Talmidei Chachamim. Now, this is very interesting. We're going to veer off a little bit. D'moikir Rabbanon, if you honor Talmidei Chachamim, havin leichas nevasa Rabbanon, you'll have son-in-laws who are Talmidei Chachamim. D'dachel merabbanon, if you're scared of Talmidei Chachamim, you'll become a Talmidei Chacham. So you got it? If you love Talmidei Chachamim, your children will become Talmidei Chachamim. If you honor them, you'll have son-in-laws. If you fear them, you'll become Talmidei Chacham. So the Gemara says, but what if you never open up a sefer? Then also you become Talmidei Chacham? The Gemara says, nice try. Right? If you fear a Talmidei Chacham, but you don't open up the sefer, then people will listen to you like they listen to Talmidei Chachamim. Okay. What does this mean? Says the Maral, why would you love somebody? Because you're attached to them. You cling to them. Nafshay kishur b'nafshay. If you love Talmidei Chachamim to the extent where your soul is intertwined with the Talmid Chacham, then your child, who your soul is intertwined with, nafshay kishur b'nafshay, will be a Talmid Chacham. But your son-in-law, listen to this. Your son is you. You and your son, it's one entity. Bra kara davua. So if you love the Talmid Chacham and you're intertwined with Talmid Chacham, then you'll be intertwined with your son who's a Talmid Chacham. But your son-in-law is not you. Your son-in-law is like your suit. What does that mean? Why is your son-in-law like your suit? Rabbi Yochanan said, Mani mechabdusa. My clothing bring me honor. Right? Why? Because if you're not wearing any clothing, then you're quite embarrassed. If you're wearing the gachkas, not too good. You're wearing a nice shirt, you have more honor. If you're wearing a nice suit, then you're honorable. Your clothing gives you honor. The same way, if you're wearing a nice suit, it gives you honor. Your son-in-law is like your suit. It's like extraneous to you. It's like an extra thing that you have that people look at and say, oh, this guy has a nice suit. So your son-in-law is like a suit. Okay? No, it's important to have a nice suit. Because if you're wearing your gachkas, so your son-in-law, so it's like this. You ready? Maral says, if you honor Talmidei Chachamim, you're mechabed them, so you're saying that my kavod, which normally is your suit, is a Talmid Chacham. So now Hashem says, I'll give you a son-in-law who's also like a suit as your son-in-law who's a Talmid Chacham. Okay? It's a very deep concept. Okay? So Maral said, your son-in-law is like your suit. It's the item that shows you honor. So if you honor Talmidei Chachamim, your honor will be a son-in-law is a Talmid Chacham. But when you're afraid of something, you're mevatel yourself. You're saying, I am a non-entity in comparison to that. When you sit in front of the Rebbe, and you're tsittering and you're shaking, you're saying, I don't exist compared to the Rebbe. You abandon your self-identity. You abandon your self-identity to the Torah, you will become identified with the Torah, you become a Talmid Chacham. But again, going back to number 8, commandment number 8, to have Banim Talmidei Chachamim is to love Talmidei Chachamim. Number 9, again back to Rav Pam. Rav Pam once gave an address, he once gave a shmooze, and he was talking about a shalom bayis, peace and harmony in the house. And he quoted a statement from the Stipler. And the Stipler said like this. The Stipler said, what are the ingredients of good children? 2 ingredients. 50% something that we'll get to, and 50% shalom bayis. If there's peace and harmony in the home, if the parents deal with each other b'derech kavod, that's 50% of the success of the children. So I was very interested in this statement of the Stipler, that 50% of raising children is shalom bayis. Where does it say it in Chazal? Is it a Gemara? Is it a Medrash? So I wrote a letter to Rav Chaim Kanievsky many years ago. I don't know, maybe about 10 years ago. I wrote a letter to Reb Chaim. I said, it's reported that the Stipler said 50% of success in children is shown by. Did the Stipler ever say this? He said, I never heard him say it.
No.
But Rapam says he said it, and that it doesn't matter whether it is a chazal or not a chazal. Common sense. Everybody understands that if the kid is brought up in a stable home where there's peace and harmony and a semblance of stability, that's a very important ingredient in raising the kid. So whether the Stipler, I'm sure the Stipler did say it, maybe Reb Chaim didn't hear. I just was very interested to hear if Reb Chaim ever heard the Stipler say that. I have in writing. I didn't have time to put it on the sheet. By the way, on Tuesday I was preparing the Shiur, and my mother called me. She said, "When's the baby going to be born already?" I said, "As soon as I put the last Maramakam on the sheet, the baby will be born." And the Kachava, after I pasted number 43, I called up home and we went to the hospital. So we have to give credit to the baby for allowing the Shiur to happen. So that's number 9. Number 9 is, the 9th ingredient is, you got to have a stable, peaceful home. Number 10, the grand finale. You ready for this? A certain Rosh Hashiva, Nebuch, all of his children veered off the path. All of his children. And he went to the house of the Brisker Rav, and he saw the Brisker Rav sitting there, giving a shiur to all of his sons sitting around the table. And he says to the Brisker Rav, in obvious jealousy, so to speak, he said, "What did you do? What did you do right? What was your secret? How are you Zaycha? All your children are Goinim, Gedolah Yisrael. What did you do right? How did you have Hatzlacha in training your kids?" The Griz said, Hatzlacha and Chinuch. What the ingredients are? There are no ingredients. There are no ingredients. Do this, light the candles, love the Tamei Chachamim, hug the Tamei Chachamim, kiss their hands. Come on. There are no ingredients. The only ingredient is Tehillim and Demais. Tefillah. That's the only ingredient. That's the only ingredient. In fact, Reb Rafal Soloveitchik was once walking with his father, and somebody stopped the Brisker Rav, his father, and he said, "I'm very jealous of you. After the Holocaust, nearly every single home had some child who Nebuch went off. And you, all of your kids, Yereim, Ushleimim, what do you do?" The Griz did not acknowledge the comment. Many moments later, the Griz turns to his son, and he says, "They think I did something?" I'll read to you his words. Do they know how many rivers of tears I poured? When I was putting them to sleep at night and standing by their cribs, do people know how many rivers of tears I poured out? I would cry in front of the Rebbeinu Shalom that the kids should grow up with Yirah Shamayim. Another story. Somebody once asked the Griz, "What did you do to have such wonderful children?" Says the Griz, "While everybody else, when they put their kids to sleep, they sing lullaby and good night, right? Na na na. Shkach." So the Griz said, "I would say Tehillim b'demais." Says the Brisker Rav, "Never in my life did I daven one Shemona Esrei that was dry. Never in my life did I not shed tears during Shemona Esrei that my children should be Yirei Shamayim." Says the Yalkut Shimoni. Look at number 37. There's a Yalkut Shimoni regarding Sefer Ezra. By the way, if anybody wants to learn Sefer Ezra, you could join us every Tuesday morning in the Young Israel of Kigaran Hills at 9:45. Says the Yalkut Shimoni, Ois Tavshin Chavtes. There's a story about a Kohen who was God-fearing, secretly God-fearing. And he had 10 children, 6 boys and 4 girls. And every day he would daven and he would roll in the dust and cry that all of them should be Yereim Ushleimim. One day Ezra knocks on his door. He said, "We're out of here. We're going up to Eretz Yisrael." This Kohen merited to go up to Eretz Yisrael. And for 50 years he saw his sons and his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren, Kohanim, Gedolim, Kohanim, Hedyotim, Pirchei Kahuna. What did the guy do? One thing. he davened every day that his kids should be Yirei Shamayim. This is not a story, it's a Yalkut Shamayim. Yalkut Shamayim. Look in number 39. It says the Shlach HaKadosh. Very powerful words. V'tamid tia tefila shigura b'fiyava'in. There's a Shlach HaKadosh in Shar HaOsiyos. Always should a parent accustom himself to daven lehispalel al zaram, to daven for their children, sheyu loimdei Torah, that they should be involved in learning Torah. V'tzadikim, not daven they should be, good Jews. They should be righteous. Balei midos toivos, says the Shla. At what intervals of davening should you focus on this? There are three main parts of davening we should have in mind that your children should be lomdei Torah and balei midos tovos. Number one, v'chavein b'ma'od al zeh b'berchas ha'Torah. In the words when you say v'niya anachnu v'tzetzoinu, you should have in mind your children should be lomdei Torah, Yirei Shamayim. When you say in Ava Rabbah, Avinu av harachaman, merciful God, hamerachem, rachim aleinu, the same b'libenu, you should have in mind that your children and grandchildren should be lomdei Torah. And when you say in Uvalot Tzion, Laman loy niga larik loy nele labhalari b'nishaylam, allow my efforts to be justified, so I did not create for emptiness. You should have in mind that your children should be lomdei Torah and Yirei Shamayim. Rabbi say, you look at number 41 in the Mishnah Brura. He doesn't quote the Shla, but he's saying over the words of the Shla in Shar HaOsiyos word for word. It's brought down in the Mishnah Brura what we just read, that a parent should accustom himself always. All day, you're walking down the street, you're davening for your children. You're in the store, you're davening for your children. You're putting them to sleep, you're davening for them. When I was learning in Eretz Yisrael, I had the zchus to meet a very big tzaddik, Rav Mordechai Zuckerman. And he was one of the last Talmidim of the Chavetz Chaim. And they once interviewed him. They said, look, the Chavetz Chaim, he was a great tzaddik. He's living in a generation of Gedolei Olam. He had tremendous tzaddikim, tremendous Tamei Chachamim. What was it about the Chavetz Chaim that he rose above everybody else? So Rav Zuckerman gave 4 reasons. One reason, because of his wife. His wife, very simple, from a very simple home, not a miucheses, didn't have big hasagas, didn't have big dreams. She let him sit and learn. That was the first ingredient. The second ingredient, the tears of his mother. See, we think, Chavetz Chaim is a gadol hador. Why? Tremendous hasmada, which is probably also true. Says Mordechai Zuckerman, you want to pinpoint exactly what was different about the Chavetz Chaim? His mother's tears. So we'll end off with the following story, one of my all-time favorite stories. So you say, yeah, but I'm already an old grandfather. When do you abdicate your job as a parent? At what point do you say, okay, I did my job. Kid, you're on your own. I did everything I could for you. I davened for you. I was your chaver. I was your patron. I was your best friend. Right? I fulfilled commandment number 1. I was your best friend. I fulfilled commandment number 2. I meant everything I told you. I fulfilled commandment number 3. I was a living example. I fulfilled commandment number 4. I enjoyed my learning. Number 5. I never caught you red-handed. Number 6. I gave tzedakah. I did chesed. I took care of the Shabbos candles. I loved Talmidei Chachamim. I had wonderful shalom bayis. But enough already. It's time to retire. At what point do you abdicate your job as a parent? So someone once came to the stipler, and he said to the stipler, give me a bracha that I should have successful children. Stipler said, what? A bracha for successful children? You got to daven. He says, you think you'll have good children without tefillah? You should know, says the stipler, until this very day, I daven for my little boy over my Chaim Kol, my Chaim Chi, every day I daven for him, my little Yingala. His son, of course, Reb Chaim Kanievsky, one of the Gedolei Hador today. My little boy, Reb Chaim, I daven for him every day. How old was Reb Chaim at the time? 52 years old. The stipler was probably, a Zakein, Seva Yamim. Stipler says, not a day of my life goes by that my little Chaimul should not be a Yarei Shamayim. So if you want to know when you abdicate your job, as long as you're still vertical, Right? As long as you're still breathing, the job is incumbent on you to be mispalel for your children. Rebbeinu Shem should bless all of us with banim, tamich chachamim, yirei shamayim, balei midos.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.